broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi everyone, it's Leanne Denby, President of Argys and Director of Sustainability at Macquarie University. I'm joined by Ed Ma, who's also going to be doing some presentation on Back to Basics, the LiFE Index. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon. Hopefully you have an ability to have some lunch as we go along. Just for your information, you should have a control panel on your screen, which is what's linked up to the GoToWebinar system. In that, there are two areas. One is called questions and one is called chat. If you do have any questions or you want to interact in any way during the session, because you're currently all muted, please let us know. Let's say we all agree to use the chat functionality, and both Ed and I will keep that box open and keep an eye on you putting anything in there. And if you have any questions or any comments as we're going along, and we do want you to interject as needed, let us know and we can unmute you and you can join the conversation. The reason why you're on mute is not because we don't want your contribution, it just it stops a lot of the feedback that can occur when everybody has their mics on. So without further ado, what I'll do is I will now attempt to share my screen. I'm about to start the presentation, so what you should see is now a screenshot which will have Accreditation Back to Basics, the LiFE Index. If anyone is currently unable to see that screen, please let me know in the chat bar and I'll do whatever I can to fix that. Though I do warn you, I am technologically challenged, so I may pass it to Ed to do something about it. As I mentioned, this is a session about giving another basic overview of what the LiFE or Learning in Future Environments Index is. And the things that we'll be covering today include just a very brief background on how we got to where we are with the LiFE Index, some information about the framework itself, how it can be used. We're going to do a comparison of LiFE to other reporting requirements or systems that are currently out there and available, so you can see how LiFE fits into your overall plans. And then we'll do a quick introduction of the EcoPortal online system that we have, where we take the LiFE Index basically to the next level, and it becomes more about almost like an EMS, an environmental management system, but it's actually way more than that, as you'll see. So how did we get to where we are with the LiFE Index? Well, there was an easy realization way back in 2011, 2012, when Argys and EAUC were having a conversation about, how can we better support our members and the sector more broadly. It was clear to see that there was excellent work happening across many institutions, though overall progress was still mixed. There was a lot of focus on facilities area, looking at waste, water, energy, etc., not without good reason. Obviously, that's an excellent place to start. There was still an issue with whole institution engagement. So on the whole, most institutions had pockets of engagement. Those people who were engaged were generally quite engaged, but that holistic engagement still remained somewhat of a challenge. And often available reporting and metric systems didn't actually support a holistic approach to campus sustainability within a higher or further education institution, and nor did they really give any guidance on, well, how do you do holistic campus sustainability? So with that realisation, EAUC and Argys went to their members and the sector more broadly and asked them, what is it that you want? What do you need? What will help you support? What will help support you in being able to do campus sustainability at a more holistic level so that you can have the conversations you need to have across your campus? And what the sector came back and said was that they want something that would recognise process and practice. So there was elements of stuff happening. So initiatives would occur, but not necessarily as a result of a policy or a strategy or a plan that was in place. That was fine. There was also often implementation gaps. So where there was a plan or a policy in place, often actually implementing all of the objectives or the expectations of that policy or that plan had left quite a number of gaps. But in wanting something that would provide some sort of guidance and support, they wanted something that would also give them guidance and support, but it wouldn't be overly prescribed, in that it could be tweaked and twisted and turned to meet individual institution circumstances. It was very important that we recognise that institutional journeys are non-linear. It wasn't a case of step one, you build a policy. Step two, you create a strategy. Step three, you create an action plan. Things happened all over the place. They also said that they wanted some kind of tool that would help them manage and evidence what they were doing. So often a lot of the policies, the plans, the initiatives, all the stuff that was happening around sustainability would sit in a place on someone's laptops or in a Dropbox folder or somewhere where it wasn't actually easy to get anyone else within the institution to have a look at it and see what was going on. And importantly, they also wanted to see how cross-institutional dialogue could be stimulated, because often the case with sustainability is you get pocketed as one thing or another. You're a tree hugger. Oh, you just deal with waste and water. Oh, you just do this. So how could you have some kind of approach or framework that would allow cross-institutional dialogue to be stimulated? And please, if I'm going too fast, let me know. And so came about the LiFE Index. So Learning in Future Environments, or the LiFE Index, was the creation of a number of colleagues from across the sector in the UK, Australia and New Zealand. So focus groups were brought together across all three of those areas to really nut out what they wanted the LiFE Index to look like and how it would best suit educational requirements. So it is a performance management and improvement system, and it has a capacity to allow self-assessment, management and improvement for a holistic campus sustainability approach. Now, at the moment, we don't have accreditation in place. Now, EAUC is working with the Stockholm Environment Institute to develop a system that will allow bespoke accreditation with an underlying compatible criteria, so that you can be awarded a bronze, silver or gold accreditation. But it also provides you an element of very one-on-one feedback as to how you could fill any gaps that were there, or how you could move to the next level, for example. So that's in the pipeline, and it will be coming sometime in the future. And this is essentially what it looks like. I'm sure you're all familiar with it in some way, shape or form, because it has been out there quite a bit. Obviously, the ACTS conference uses those 4 quarters of the circle to define the streams that it has for each of the concurrent sessions. But it looks like this for a specific reason. So these focus groups looked at research, they looked at what was happening on campuses, and this is what they came back with. They felt to do holistic campus sustainability, you needed to be addressing actions within each of these 4 priority areas, from leadership and governance right through the full circle of partnership and engagement, learning, teaching and research, facilities and operations. Then, to better define what we meant by each of those different quarters or priority areas, it was discussed, well, what's within the body of those themes. And hence you have those 4 rectangular shaped objects that hang off each of the priority areas or quarters, which tell you what each of those different areas is about. Now, all of these themes and sub-themes, again, were defined by the sector. These are all the areas they feel need to be addressed as an educational institution to be moving towards holistic campus sustainability. So we had that framework which helped us with our approach. But then we thought, well, what else can we do that would help motivate action and understand where gaps were occurring, or what else needed to be done to ensure the sustainability of the sustainability approach itself. So the groups came back with this 8-cell framework. And what this framework allows you to do is look at each of those areas, from policy and strategy through to links to curriculum, and it gets you to ask the questions as to whether you are taking action or have done any considerable discussion within each of these areas. All of these are core to putting in place something that is sustainable over the long run. So within policy and strategy, you're looking at those institutional frameworks behind something that is maintained into the future. Action planning is obviously the implementation of those policies and strategies. Stakeholder engagement is extremely important in feeding into the previous two, but also obviously in implementing anything as well. You need to have your stakeholders along with you to be successful in implementation. For measurement, there's nothing better than understanding how you're impacting within your activity or your initiative without having any kind of measurement in place. It makes it really difficult to further sell your story. For communication, obviously, to get that buy-in, that stakeholder engagement, you need to have really active communication. Training and support, you can't necessarily ask people to change unless you've got some kind of support there for them to be changed. And academics are a really good example of that. If we want them to think about sustainability within their units, we need to make sure they have the support behind them in order to make that happen. Implementation, it's the way things get done. How do you ensure that all of those previous cells meet together to ensure that it's a sustainable initiative, activity, process? And of course, and honestly, probably most importantly, how can we make links between campus, curriculum, and community for any single thing that we do? Because that shows its relevance not just as a sustainability team doing stuff within a certain area, it's about bringing it back to the core business of the university. Now, each of these cells is not put in any particular order. Each of these cells can be addressed in a way that meets your specific needs. And a really good example is often initiatives take place within institutions that have brought in some level of stakeholder engagement, some level of implementation, and often have links to curriculum. But there's no strategy or policy in place that would have led to that initiative occurring. So this 8-cell framework is not about saying you need to move from policy and strategy to action planning to stakeholder engagement. It's just simply saying all these areas need to be considered to ensure holistic sustainability that's maintained well into the future. And all of them link back to our previous slides that we have in place. So all of these link back to everything within this framework is how do we do it in leadership and governance? How do we do it in learning, teaching and research? We ask all of these questions within each of those areas as well. Hopefully I'm not going too fast. So this framework that we have has been well developed beyond that diagram that you saw. It actually has a whole body of work around it, and that is available to any member of ACTS through life.acts.asn.au. Now, you need to have created an ACTS account in order to access it, which is really easy to do. You just go to the ACTS homepage and you can create an account there. But what you see when you go into the web version is a whole heap of content around why is it important, why you should be doing this, what are examples of good practice, and then questions against each of those different cells that I showed you before. So what it's really allowing you to do is either and build your business case and your strategy, but it also provides an avenue of gap analysis, because you can look at each of those different areas within this framework and you can look at the questions that are asked, you can look at the justification for why you should be doing it, and see whether you feel at your own institution this is the way that you're going. This is the kind of trend in which you are moving towards. So I urge you all to have a look at that website. It's easily available. And it has a lot of the good approaches that you need to kind of consider holistic sustainability. So talked a lot about the background, about what it looks like, and the reasoning that it came to look like it looks like at the moment. But essentially what you want to know is how can it be used? Well, I've mentioned in the past about how you can actually use this as your strategic approach for campus sustainability. So a good example, and I can speak from Macquarie University's perspective, our whole strategy is based on this framework. So we have built a strategy around these 4 priority areas, all of the sub-themes. Our action plan addresses each of these different things, and it's allowed us to build a dialogue across the campus about how we approach strategic sustainability. I have found that diagram in particular to be an excellent way to have discussion at the executive level. Sorry about that noise, that was outside the room. At the executive level and with other departments on campus. I can take that framework, that circle and those 4 squares into any conversation and put it down on the table and say, this is how we do campus sustainability. This is your specific area, and I'll point to somewhere on that diagram to kind of highlight how they fit into our approach. And then I can start the conversation about, now what can we do together in order to realise some excellent outcomes in this space? So for me, that framework has provided an ability to cut through all the misunderstanding or miscommunication about what it is we do with sustainability on campus in one simple diagram. And it's been very successful for me, particularly at the executive level, because they look at it, they get it, and the conversation starts a lot easier. The context that we provide, or the content that we provide on the LiFE Index framework site, gives you the words that you need to build a business case. It gives you the why it's important, what you should be doing, how you can approach it. All of that is there for you to make it easy to have a conversation with someone about the whys for the business case. It also gives you the basis for words that you can build into policy. So no matter if you're looking at a holistic sustainability policy right down to the waste policy, it gives you some ideas and content that you can build on for your policy as well. And as I mentioned before, it allows an element of self-assessment because you can look at the examples of good practice. You can look at what could be happening in the space within each of those different areas. You can see what the words are there, and they may trigger where you haven't done something, or alternatively, what it will trigger is like, yeah, actually, we've done that. We know we're doing that really well. So we found it a really good way every year to come in as a team, sit down with that diagram and look at what have we been doing well, what haven't we been doing well, where are our gaps, and that forms the basis of our actions for the next coming year. And I think from there, I'm going to hand over to Ed to take over because I think I've talked a lot. And Ed has a lot to offer as well. So we're just going to bear with us while I change the presenter over to Ed, and he will take you on the next part of the journey.
Thanks, Leanne, for that introduction and summary. So just pull up my screen. What can we see there at the moment, Leanne? Is that a PDF or are you seeing the
PDF, yes.
Okay, so I'll just flip those across.
That'd be the one.
Okay, you don't have the GoToWebinar stuff cluttering it, do you?
It's fine. A little,
okay,
but everyone will have that.
I'll close it up. Okay, so I guess where my coverage of the presentation will go to, as Leanne indicated at the start, is to provide some direction on how the LiFE tool interacts with some other schemes, and to provide some introduction to the EcoPortal tool, which is probably fairly new for a lot of the people that are participating in this webinar at the moment. So I guess the first thing that I want to highlight when it comes to LiFE versus some other schemes, which certainly is an area that causes a lot of confusion, I think, when you're talking to ACTS members and people that have come across the LiFE index, is how does LiFE actually compare and interact with LiFE, with these other tools? And if I'm using one of those other tools, is there any role for LiFE to play at our particular organisation? And the thing that I want to emphasize is that LiFE can certainly work in parallel and complement some of those other schemes, in fact probably all of those other schemes, and we'll expand on that a little bit further as we go through the summary slides here. So what I've prepared here is just a table which covers 2 slides, and it just provides some background to LiFE, which I think Leanne's already gone into a fair bit of detail about, but just to recap, obviously the focus of LiFE is both environmental and social. In terms of whether it's a report format or a management framework, it can fill both roles, but probably the most critical aspect that it plays in an organisation is providing you with a management framework and a structure to basically hang your entire sustainability program off. It gives you guidance on how to go about that. It provides a facility to undertake gap analysis, and it provides the elements to undertake stakeholder consultation and engagement through that process. It is also a tool that can give you a fairly, well, very easy reporting framework as well, particularly when it's backed up through the smarts of a tool such as EcoPortal, which can automate a lot of that for you, and we will touch on that as we start talking about EcoPortal and a bit more background. In terms of whether the process is qualitative or quantitative, it's predominantly qualitative, so it is very much about having those conversations and understanding where your organisation is in terms of all those aspects of sustainability that were covered by Leanne in terms of the frameworks. But if you delve into some of those, it does start to get quantitative as well if you want to use it that way. It's certainly not a mandatory component of adopting the index, but if you wanted to use it with a focus to discuss energy, for example, in your institution, then it will guide you about how to go about that. And again, tools like EcoPortal can play a role within your institution. Some of the other features which Leanne mentioned is that it can act as a gap analysis tool. It drives stakeholder involvement, and perhaps most significantly is the emphasis on the positive contributions that a tertiary education institution can have in driving sustainability beyond their own doorstep. So again, as Leanne mentioned, I guess the historical baseline that we've come from when it comes to sustainability in a tertiary education institution is focusing on campus operations, so minimising our footprint, using less, having less of a negative impact on our environment. But there's much more that we can do, particularly when we look at our core business of teaching and learning and the research that we undertake. So that's where we can have a massive impact to produce, I guess, leaders of the future, as well as new knowledge that is going to have implications beyond our doorsteps. So just talking about some of the other schemes that people may have already adopted or have heard about and are considering to use in their own institution. The Global Reporting Index, or GRI, as it's often mentioned as, is a widely recognised reporting framework. So its pedigree or history is largely out of financial reporting processes. It covers economic, of course, but also social and environmental. And I guess it's really intended to drive a comprehensive annual reporting process for an institution or an organisation. So some of the biggest companies with the biggest names in the world have utilised this process for a number of years now, and those that do a good job of it, you'll see that they're holding their environmental and social credentials up there in the same light as their economic credentials. So it certainly has a role, and it's a good process. Some of the benefits that it offers is that, as I mentioned, it's globally recognised and continues to gain traction. It does provide some guidance in defining materiality, or what is most important to report on for an organisation. What I will note though is that it does not have a supplement to cover education institutions. So a university or a TAFE that is adopting GRI will probably be using generic aspects of the GRI guidelines and then having to make their own their own calls on what more above and beyond that they're going to report on. It also has some inbuilt mechanisms or some, I guess, some processes that should be followed to ensure the accuracy of the reports that are being prepared. But it is a reporting framework. I guess by undertaking a comprehensive reporting framework, you are establishing discussions or at least asking people within your organisation for information that highlights the fact that you're putting sustainability on the agenda. So often many good things come out of that, but it doesn't necessarily provide you with a framework for where to go from there or that gap analysis process. So hopefully that gives you a bit of an indication of the role that GRI might play. And obviously, if you are already committed to GRI, there's no reason that you couldn't continue to maintain that position if you were to adopt LiFE. I guess what you will find is that as you're working through the LiFE index, you will generally already have information on hand that will allow you to have more informed conversations about the various aspects of the LiFE index. And you're probably starting from a better position as well, in that people are already paying attention or are already doing some good things to progress the sustainability agenda across the institution. Moving on to ISO 14001, I think this is a pretty widely recognised scheme. It's an environmental management system, so it's very much a management framework as opposed to reporting format. It's a qualitative process, so it's about having structures and processes in place to ensure that an organisation is doing the right thing when it comes to environmental protection and being proactive in that space. It really does have a focus on minimising negative impact of an organisation's operations on the environment, but it is something that is globally used and recognised. I guess my perspective is that it's probably got its pedigree within the manufacturing and industrial sector, where I guess we have organisations that have very large footprints. They have a lot of potential to impart harm on their surrounding environment, whether that be through air pollution, water pollution, or other activities. Mining's another example where it is critical that they have tight processes in place to ensure that they minimise the harm that they may have on their surrounding environment. And I guess the three key components of an environmental management system is, as I mentioned, that pollution prevention aspect, maintaining and ensuring environmental compliance, so making sure that you're aware of all the relevant legislation and you're adhering to that, and also having a commitment to continuous improvement of the environmental management system itself. So hopefully that's given you a bit of background. Again, I would not see that there's any reason that an organisation that is committed to ISO 14001, which I think is only a fairly small number when it comes to tertiary institutions, but those that are, there is again no reason why they shouldn't maintain that position if they were to go down the path of LiFE as well. Similar to GRI, the findings would be that they are already performing better, most likely, when it comes particularly to those campus operation aspects of their organisation. But the value of LiFE would be that it would start to unpack all of those other elements of a tertiary education institution that ISO doesn't really delve into. So moving into a couple of other schemes that people are probably well aware of, which do tend to cause, again, some confusion when talking about LiFE. So we have the TEFMA benchmarking process. So an annual process where the majority of universities, definitely across Australasia, are preparing, are preparing submissions that typically revolve around the operational footprint of their organisations. They do have a couple of qualitative components about them, but it really does revolve around the carbon emissions, the energy, the water, and the waste. It can be a useful process in that it gives you an indication of where you're sitting across the sector, and it may provide you with some guidance on whether you have a lot of work to do, whether you're starting to do good things and the programs that you have in place are starting to pay dividends. But when it comes to understanding what next for your institution, it probably doesn't provide you with a fantastic amount of guidance in that regard. The next scheme that I just wanted to touch on is Green Star. Again, most people are probably quite familiar with this. It's a process that's been developed and is administered by the Green Building Council of Australia within Australia. It does have equivalents that exist right around the world and is something that is quite widely recognised. It's exclusively used in the design and construction of a built facility. It actually has expanded beyond single buildings, and it does incorporate communities, particularly residential communities. So its scope is expanding, and they look to continue that as time goes on. But it does very much focus on those environmental and social aspects in the context of the built environment. So when it comes to things like engaging with the community, the curriculum that you undertake, the research that you're producing, it is all bounded by the constraints of the single building that you're constructing. But hopefully people are quite familiar with that anyway. The last one that I wanted to touch on is NGERS, or the National Greenhouse and Energy Reporting Scheme. This is a scheme that is only undertaken or administered in Australia. It's put in place. It's a mandatory requirement set by the Australian government, essentially to give them the ability to track greenhouse emissions and energy consumed by the largest users and emitters in Australia. And my understanding is that was to assist with Kyoto reporting obligations and also to assist with the implementation of the carbon tax when it was in place. So it does only require those participating in it to report on both their energy use and also the greenhouse gas emissions that they're producing. So it's pretty obvious that it does not have the same extent or coverage as some of these other tools that we've mentioned. So now what I wanted to do is just to touch on the EcoPortal tool, which is a system which has been developed in partnership with a New Zealand-based business known as EcoPortal, who had put a lot of work in developing a dynamic online piece of software that would assist organisations in the implementation of their sustainability programs. So some of the key features of that is that it certainly assists with collaboration. It streamlines monitoring and reporting within an institution, and it consists of a highly visual set of tools which can be very useful for engaging all kinds of stakeholders, whether they be students who are used to playing around in the world of social media, through to senior managers who expect to see finely honed reports sit on their desk that just gives them the most pertinent information. So some of the things that EcoPortal is able to do, and I will show some screenshots in later slides, so you've got a bit of a visual indication of what it can provide for you, but it is very powerful, in my opinion, in breaking down information silos that may exist within an organisation. I'm sure we've all experienced those at different times, particularly when we're talking about the context of the Learning in Future Environments Index, where we're going well beyond the, I guess, typical areas of influence that a sustainability office within a TAFE or university may have, and starting to knock onto the doors of our colleagues that need to have a role, play a role when it comes to implementing sustainability improvements. So EcoPortal provides some smarts in that it gives you a very easily administrable portal that gives you some nice and easy to interact with screens and systems and menus to access information at the point that you want it, and the screenshots will hopefully do a better job of explaining that. Some other benefits that it provides is aiding, supporting champions to take ownership for driving sustainability in their part of the institution. So building on that last point that I made, sometimes it can be a challenge. Say, for example, you have a colleague within your division of information technology that has been given the responsibility for driving some programs within that part of the institution. You're seeking to give them access to some of the data that you already have on hand, because you might have started doing some homework around IT within your organisation. And beyond that, you are keen to make them drive the program, or at least be a very active contributor to the program. So this is where EcoPortal can step in. You can very easily give that person the administrative rights to that part of the software. They then have the capacity to start accessing reports, which may be around metrics. It may be documents that have been developed by yourself or by other people in the organisation that they can start to retrieve, that they can add to, that they can edit and upload, and so on and so forth. It's pretty much unlimited, the types and styles of information that you can upload and circulate. And as I mentioned previously, it does offer some similar interactivity to that which people will see within the common social media platform. So it makes the portal fun to use and quite interactive, and particularly appealing, I think, to those that are fairly time poor and just want to get in there and engage with the tool as quickly as possible. So here's a couple of screenshots now. So what we have here, and I hope that the image is large enough for you to see, but it's on the left hand side. You can start to see the menu structure that exists within the software, and this is really one of the home pages that you would land on that gives you a visual indication of the LiFE index in the context of your institution. So it's got the ability to color code current standing or performance when it comes to each of the frameworks across the 4 priority areas. And that might be a very easy way for you as a sustainability manager, or for your colleagues, to understand which parts of the organisation perhaps not progressed at all, which parts of the organisation are already doing quite good things when it comes to sustainability improvement, and those which have more work to be done. And the software operates through basically everything being an interactive menu, so you could hover over these segments of the wheel and enter into those frameworks and explore them in more detail. Similarly, you could work your way through these menus on the left here and access information about any particular framework in further detail as well. When it comes to administrating access to the system, this is a screenshot from the demo site, so you can see some familiar names there, and a few that probably don't make a lot of sense to be there on for the same organisation, but it just at least gives you an indication of the way that individual users can be set up with different responsibilities, access to different information, and I guess really provide you with, as I mentioned before, that highly time effective and easily administrable stakeholder or champion type management within your organisation, so they can be quickly brought up to speed and hit the ground running with access to the key information that may have already been undertaken by other people within the organisation. Because I know that from my own experience within my own institution, it might seem like a trivial thing, but providing a central repository for information which may be partially sensitive, or just that stuff that you want new people to be able to access, can often be a big barrier. So in terms of metrics, this may or may not be a key feature for those looking to undertake the system. I think a lot of people do already have their own tools in place when it comes to the storage and retention and presentation of quantitative data, but EcoPortal certainly provides the capacity for you to do the same within it as well. And I guess the advantage is that it can be set up so that these are accessible basically to all those that you need to have access to the data, that may have a need to maintain that data, add new entries, or those that you just want to have access to it so it's visible to them and they're tracking how performance is going within their part of the organisation. There's different ways that this can be, that the data can be maintained. The most basic being essentially manual entries that then convert the data into a visual summary. Obviously, you could click onto each of these and start to explore that in more detail. But there is also some higher end capacity within EcoPortal so that some of this data can actually find its way into the system automatically or through bulk uploads such as formatted spreadsheets and the like. So it starts to take away some of that manual tedious issue that may surround the collection and maintenance of this quantitative data, and also make life easy if it came to cutting over to this system from existing reporting processes. Just starting to explore a particular framework and in this case an activity area within the LiFE index. It doesn't give you all the menus that are visible on the screen, but hopefully it gives you an indication of some of the features that exist. So in this particular screen you can see that we've still got this common visual indicator which has existed within the LiFE index previously, where we can provide essentially a color-coded thumbs up to indicate our current performance against this particular activity area. That is actually customizable by the administrator, so it's generally pretty straightforward, though. Red generally indicates that you've got more work to be done. You have the capacity to start adding text-based comments that can be shared to all those other users or people that are relevant to this particular activity area of your program. You can start to upload documentation or examples of best practice. Now, this may be information that's specific to your organization, or it may also be, and this is something that I've started thinking about in the use of the tool within my own organization, is using it to direct, I guess, those sustainability champions within other parts of the organization to best practice documentation that I've come across within other institutions. So we may not currently have an equivalent version of it, but I'm making their life easier by providing easy hyperlinked information that's there for evermore for future reference, that they can then jump across to start getting some context around, for example, the development of an implementation plan for sustainable ICT in the institution. It can be completely customized so that you're actually providing further guidance beyond, or I guess, aspects that are institutionally specific to your organization, and they might take the form of a checklist, for example. So if you've got a particular cohort of users within the system that may only be familiar with one aspect of the sustainable ICT framework, and they need further guidance around what could be good practice for them to be undertaking, you could start to provide this as a planning checklist for them. You might also have types of processes that are replicated across multiple schools or divisions within your institution that you can create once and then provide those cross-references so those individuals can be referring back to and starting to get some additional direction and context around what you might be asking of them. You can also see these icons down the bottom here which give you an indication of all the myriad of different forms of information that you can easily share and upload. And as I mentioned before, one of the key features being insert as a cross-reference at the key part of the LiFE framework where it's really going to be of most use for people that are working through the system. So they don't necessarily have to start hunting for information through a cold web search, which may otherwise be the case. And again, this is just another visual indicator, a screenshot that starts to show some of the range of information, and I suppose particularly on the social media type style of presenting the information so that you can make it highly interactive. In this case, there's a YouTube style video that's been embedded into this screen, which you might find particularly engaging, for example, for a program that's looking to go out to a majority of staff who may have limited familiarity or exposures to sustainability programs, or to students who may be engaged in different ways. So hopefully that's given you a bit of insight to the EcoPortal tool. I have to confess that it's basically each time that I access it and I get further demonstration from those that administer the tool and developed it, I learn about new functionality. So I think the more familiar you become with it, and the more that you utilize it, you start to find different ways that it could be applied in your institution. And it does actually come with some useful packages around support from those that are most familiar with it, so they can either take you through more advanced user training or even work with you to do that initial setup, upload of information and customization of it to best suit your institution. So I guess, Leanne, we'll open things up for any questions.
Yeah, I think now's a good time that if anyone does have any questions, please indicate in the control panel that you have there. But one more thing on this last screenshot that you can see there. This is actually part of an ideas hub, and this is one of the more brilliant things that I like about this system, is that you can open up this ideas hub to as many people as you want, and people from anywhere can submit ideas on what you should be doing on campus, and other people can vote on whether they think it's a good idea or not. So it provides a way to engage with the community who can actively participate, not just in giving ideas and suggestions on things you could do, but actually giving them, your community, the option to say whether they think it's a good idea or not. So you get that with that really institutional participation through the system. And while it's done an excellent job of trying to give you the highlights of the system through screenshots, it's really something that you can only truly understand until you get in there and you start playing with it, and then you realize, oh, we could do that with it as well. Oh, we can make that happen. So the flexibility of the system is quite outstanding as well, and we found EcoPortal extremely good to work with in understanding our needs, and then also if we give them some idea of what we thought would be useful for the sector, they've done their best to make it happen. So I'm not sure if anyone's aware, we did have a previous LiFE index that was online. It's that old version is nothing in comparison to this new version and the relationship that's been built through the people who've developed it. So we're really happy that we have this relationship with EcoPortal. And I think I have Jared Machiavelli wanting to ask a question, and I have to also acknowledge Jared. He works with Catalyst, who's a third-party organisation who also work with EcoPortal on the support functionality of the system. So I'll just see if Jared does have a question.
Thanks, Leanne. Yes, just very briefly, Ed showed you some of the screenshots there from the demo site, and I just wanted to remind you that people are very welcome to get their own access to that demo site, and you just reminded me saying that it's good to go in and sort of have a play. So if people would like to do that, that is available to them. So we've sort of partially populated the demo site, and alternatively they can contact me, and you know, I can sort of go online with them and sort of take them through it a little bit. So we're very happy to help with that introductory stage.
Thanks, Jared, for pointing that out. That's a really good point. Yes, so if you do want to have a look through the system, please feel free to contact us or Jared directly, and he'll make that happen. Just going to mute you again, Jared, and unmute Hayley, who also has a question. Hayley, would you like to ask your question? If you don't have a microphone, I apologise. I can ask the question on your behalf, but I'll just give you a second to see if you can ask it yourself. Okay, I'm going to assume that Hayley doesn't have capacity to ask the question. So Hayley's question was, I am assuming that the EcoPortal generates an annual report for sustainability performance. If so, can we see an example? You do have capacity to have reports developed through the system, and the level of the reports differs with the level of interaction with the system. So there are different levels providing different functionality as well. I might even just hand this one over to Jared to see if he can give further detail on that. But you can basically bespoke your reporting to what you want according to the level that you're at. So if you sign on to do level 1 with EcoPortal, the reports are very standard. They're very detailed, but you don't get the opportunity to fully bespoke it like you do at level 3. But Jared, I might just flick to you to see if you can provide more information on that one.
Yep. Well, the answer is yes. And EcoPortal consists really of lots and lots and lots of pages. So each of those sort of headings that Leanne went through at the very beginning sort of has its own page in EcoPortal. And Ed was just taking you through the page devoted to that particular issue to do with the IT people. So that means it's very easy to create a report because you just tell it which pages you want to include in the report. But on the demo site, we've prepared some sort of example, sort of standardized reports where we've just compiled all of the pages that make up the LiFE index, and so that would be your report. But on each page, you can go in and you can say, okay, well, I'd like to tick on these parts of that page that would go into the report, but I'll put a cross against these sections here, which are just sort of scruffy notes or something that won't go into the report. So you've got a fair bit of flexibility, but it does mean that you can press a button and it'll auto-generate the report for you once you've decided what you want in it.
Thanks,
Over to you,
Jared.
Leanne.
Thanks, Jared. We don't have an example to show you at the moment, Hayley, but as Jared mentioned, you're certainly welcome to go in and have a look at the demo site, and you'll see in there's a reporting tab, and pretty much everything that Jared just explained, you'll see how that can happen for you. Are there any other questions at all from anyone? Any other comments either? Because we really like to hear comments from our sector to see whether they think there's anything missing from it, or so if you have anything, please let us know. Ed, maybe you could sing while we have this awkward blank silence.
Might be a quick way to bring the call to an end.
If there are no other questions at this stage, Jared's mentioned already that you're quite welcome to go in and have a look at the EcoPortal demo site. Just give us send us an email, or send Jared an email, or Ree an email, and we'll set that up for you. Do go into the very basic LiFE framework that we have available free to all members. It will give you a very basic taste of what the LiFE index offers you, but imagine that hyped up and then put into an EcoPortal system that kind of does all this interactive stuff as well. If you do have any other questions after today, again, please feel free to either contact Ed or myself, and we'll do our very best to answer them as quickly as we can. Ed and I both use LiFE and EcoPortal, so and while we're both just kind of at the very start of using EcoPortal, we can bring you the institutional perspective on how the framework and the system works for us, and perhaps that might help you as well. So if there's no other questions or comments at this stage, we might bring the webinar to a close. Again, thank you all for joining us. We appreciate that you've given up an hour of your time to listen in, and as I said, hopefully you're able to get some lunch in during that time as well. And hopefully we'll hear from you in the future. Thank you.
Thanks, Leanne. Thanks, everyone, for your attendance.